On September 9, 2023, world leaders from 19 countries gathered in India for the G20 summit. They agreed on one specific thing that would forever change the fate of global trade: an ambitious trade corridor linking India with the rest of the world. The corridor will directly connect India to Europe via the Middle East. This will ultimately bypass the use of the Suez Canal, currently the shortest and most popular route in maritime traffic. Every year, the Suez Canal allows over $1 trillion worth of goods to pass through. This includes precious cargo items like oil barrels, medical supplies, food items, and maybe even that Amazon package you ordered yesterday. Now, the Suez has been doing its job for 150 years. Will this new kid on the block dethrone a century-old trade route? This is the world map. If you want to ship goods between Asia and Europe, this is the path you have to follow. The cargo ship sets sail from a major Asian port like Mumbai and enters the Arabian Sea. To reach Europe, the vessel has to pass through the Suez Canal. Right now, this canal is the only route connecting the European market with the Asian region. If it wasn't for the Suez Canal, all the vessels would have to pass through the southern tip of Africa to reach Europe. In this way, this single canal has saved a journey of around 5,000 miles. When the canal debuted in 1869, it quickly became a favorite in the global shipping community. And the reason was obvious. The canal saves time, money, and effort. Even today, 12% of global trade passes through the Suez Canal. This translates to more than 6,000 vessels per month. Right up till 2021, the Suez Canal was enjoying its comfortable monopoly in the global trade arena. However, something happened in March of 2021 that forever changed how people view the Suez Canal. A massive container became wedged across the Suez Canal. The vessel was the length of 4 football fields and blocked the traffic from both directions. The blockage continued for 6 days, causing a significant disruption to global trade. Despite the canal being blocked for just a week, one of the shipping companies registered a loss of $89 million. It took 14 tugboats to pull the unlucky ship out of its position. This wasn't the only unlucky incident at the Suez Canal. In January 2024, the Yemen-based Houthi rebels launched an attack on the Red Sea. This is the same waterway in which the Suez Canal is located. As expected, freight traffic dropped by 45% since the attacks. During the blockage, hundreds of ships were stranded at both ends of the canal. Some vessels chose to wait for the canal to reopen, while others were rerouted via the much longer and costlier Cape of Good Hope route around Africa. Ships that took this route had to add 10 to 14 days to their original journey. Since there was no other alternative, there was nothing anyone could do. The world was starting to realize that its dependency on the Suez Canal wasn't working in its favor. It was time for a change. The proposed Indian corridor will span through India to the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and then to its final destination, Europe. It's officially known as the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, or IMEC. The corridor will consist of 2 parts: the eastern section connecting India to the Arabian Peninsula, and the northern section connecting the Arabian Peninsula to Europe. The biggest obstacle in the way of the corridor is the Arabian Sea. This sea separates India from the Middle East market. So the first leg of the IMEC will consist of a shipping route connecting these 2 regions. The cargo will be unloaded on the coast of the United Arab Emirates. From this point, the majority of the journey can be carried out on a railway. Goods unloaded at UAE will be carried via a railway line, expanded to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and finally to the Haifa port in Israel. From that point, the cargo is once again loaded on container vessels and shipped all the way to the Greek coast. This is a 40% faster route than setting sail from Mumbai and using the Suez Canal to enter Europe. Utilizing the railway for even half the journey will bring down the cost by 30%. It's a win-win for all. The IMEC is backed by the USA, the Middle East, the European Union, Israel, France, Germany, and Italy. Together, these countries constitute 40% of the world's population. But most importantly, they contribute almost half the global GDP. This is a global undertaking by all means. And when so many countries get together and are willing to spend billions on something, there's got to be more than what meets the eye. Turns out that the IMEC isn't just after the Suez Canal, It's about dethroning something much bigger. In 2013, China revealed its Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI for short. Much like the IMEC, this was China's Silk Road. The BRI is a corridor that includes a land-based segment seen in red and a maritime route shown in blue. The IMEC, much like the BRI, is a political tool for India. It's no secret that India and China, despite being neighbors, don't really like each other. Their animosity goes way back to 1962, when both countries fought a war over a territorial dispute. India was defeated, and the disputed region has since been controlled by China. After the war, there have been several border clashes between the two nations. In 2020, India banned more than 200 Chinese apps, including TikTok. This was a statement by India that not every war has to be physical. Sometimes you just have to play smart diplomatically. The IMEC corridor is another soft power move by India to counter the growing influence of China. Since IMEC is backed by the White House, this is also an indirect move by Washington to keep a check on its famous arch-rival. Apart from facilitating trade, the IMEC will also limit China's monopoly on undersea data cables. If it weren't for these cables, you wouldn't be watching this video. These undersea cables are laid on the ocean floor and transmit data between continents, forming the backbone of the global internet. China funds and builds many cable projects, either through state-owned companies or private giants. A side mission of BRI is to increase China's dominance over the internet through these data cables. China has also been accused of purposefully cutting data cables in the past to undermine its enemies. In February 2023, two undersea cables connecting Taiwan's outlying islands to the main network were severed. This compromised Taiwan's stability, which, like any other country, relies on the internet to operate. In the case of a war, China can easily threaten anyone's internet in the region. It was time for someone to respond. IMEC is expected to include new undersea fiber optic cables along the corridor, offering an alternative to Chinese ones. If you liked the video so far, kindly take a moment to subscribe to SkyBuilds. We bring the hottest news in construction with 2 fun videos each week. Now, it's worth noting that some countries are playing both sides, participating in both the BRI and IMEC simultaneously. The key players are the Middle Eastern members, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. By creating a market in both the East and West, the Gulf countries want to diversify their portfolio beyond oil. The IMEC project includes plans for hydrogen pipelines to transport hydrogen from the Middle East to Europe and India. For those who don't know, hydrogen is a clean energy source that only emits water vapor and leaves no residue in the air, unlike coal and oil. It has been used as a fuel for cars and airplanes since the beginning of the 19th century. The Middle East has the potential to become a world leader in hydrogen production. Neom City in Saudi Arabia already has the world's biggest hydrogen facility. Utilizing this plant and other facilities, the Middle East is predicted to produce 18 million metric tons of hydrogen by 2030. Their primary intention is to export it to European markets. We know that the world is slowly shifting away from fossil fuels. Their harmful emissions have polluted the planet and also given a bad reputation to oil companies like Aramco. Middle East, being a primary exporter of oil, wants to rebrand itself as a clean energy provider. And for that, they are targeting hydrogen. Europe is a potential client for the Middle East since it plans to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Here's where the IMEC comes in. IMEC can act as a hydrogen supply corridor, helping Middle Eastern nations export hydrogen to Europe and India. In this way, the Gulf countries can still continue their dominance of the energy market in a post-oil world. So you can see how important this project is to some countries. After all, the IMEC serves the interests of global superpowers like America, the Middle East, and European Union. What's it going to take to construct a project of this significance? Each section of the corridor is expected to cost between $3 to $8 billion. Billions more are required to create other infrastructure like ports and railways. Even though there's no official estimate available, IMEC can easily cost between $55 to $85 billion. Up till now, $20 billion have been pledged, mostly by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The EU has yet to roll out a solid investment plan. Given the gap between both values, it's interesting to see how it will be filled. However, the finances aren't a major problem since the participant countries are financially sound. The biggest barrier in the way is the geopolitics of the Middle East. As mentioned earlier, the IMEC passes through Jordan and Israel on its way to Europe. Jordan has an unstable security environment due to persistent economic challenges and a high proportion of refugee populations. Moreover, the Israeli war on Gaza has made Israel another potential red flag. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. Egypt owns the Suez Canal. Since IMEC will draw trade away from Suez, Egypt could fight back with policy barriers to keep the Suez route more competitive. Now, the whole appeal of the IMEC is that it is going to be faster and cheaper than the conventional maritime route. But what if it wasn't the case? Nearly 40% of IMEC is based on railways. So the cargo arriving by sea would have to be constantly loaded and unloaded on both sides. This can spiral up costs and also increase the time taken for the transfer. Whereas if you opt for a conventional maritime route using the Suez Canal, you wouldn't have to go through this hassle. While it's easy to go down this rabbit hole, there are still clear advantages of building the IMEC. If built right, this could be a lucrative deal that can change the fate of India and other member states. That's why it seems like every other country wants to create an economic corridor of its own. India has the IMEC, China has BRI, and now even Russia has joined the rat race. The nation aims to develop the Northern Sea Route as a major trade route between Europe and Asia. As this route passes through the Arctic, you might think it's impossible to pass through. But in recent years, the ice has been melting due to global warming. This makes the route open for longer periods. Russia is also investing in nuclear-powered icebreakers to keep it open year-round. Each superpower is in a race to create the Silk Road of the 21st century. The only question is, who does it first? We have already covered China's Belt and Road Initiative in one of our previous videos. So if you're interested, this next video is just for you.